The sun had long since dipped below the jagged horizon, painting the sky in hues of deep orange and crimson. The wind whispered to the tumbleweeds as they rolled across an endless expanse of desert sand, their shadows stretching unnaturally long under the fading light. Somewhere far off, a coyote howled, a haunting sound that echoed through the stillness of the evening. It was here, in this desolate wasteland where hope seemed buried beneath layers of despair, that a story unfolded unlike any other. In a small cabin perched on the edge of a dried-up riverbed, a woman sat alone by her flickering lantern. Her name was Clara Hayes, though most who knew her called her simply the widow. She had been widowed 3 years prior when her husband, John, disappeared while hunting for supplies in the treacherous Badlands. Some said he'd been taken by bandits. Others whispered darker tales of creatures lurking in those unforgiving lands. Whatever the truth, Clara had cried herself to sleep every night since his disappearance, her sorrow gnawing at her like a relentless wolf. But tonight was different. Tonight, something stirred outside her cabin, a noise so faint it could have been mistaken for the wind playing tricks on her weary mind. At first, she ignored it, thinking it might be nothing more than another restless gust sweeping through the plains. Yet, as the minutes dragged on, the sound grew louder, more insistent, a rhythmic thudding against the wooden walls of her home, followed by the unmistakable snort of a horse. Clara froze, her heart pounding in her chest. For months, she had avoided venturing beyond the safety of her cabin after dark. The wilderness around her was rife with danger. Predators both animal and human prowled these parts, and the memory of John's fate haunted her every step. But curiosity, mingled with fear, compelled her to rise from her chair and approach the door. With trembling hands, she unlatched the heavy plank of wood that served as both barrier and shield, pulling it open just enough to peer into the darkness. What she saw made her breath catch in her throat. There, standing no more than 10 paces away, was a wild Mustang. Its coat shimmered like polished obsidian under the pale glow of the rising moon, its mane flowing freely in the cool night breeze. But what struck Clara most wasn't the beauty of the creature. It was a saddle resting atop its back. Not just any saddle, but one she recognized instantly, John's saddle. The same leather harness he had used during their days together, engraved with initials she thought she would never see again. Tears welled up her eyes as memories flooded back, a floodgate opening to a torrent of emotions she had tried so hard to suppress. Joy mixed with pain, disbelief intertwined with longing. How could this be? Had John returned somehow? Or was this some cruel trick played upon her fragile psyche? She stepped out onto the porch, her bare feet brushing against the rough planks of wood. The Mustang regarded her with intelligent, unblinking eyes, its presence commanding yet strangely comforting. Slowly, cautiously, Clara reached out a hand, her fingers trembling as they hovered near the animal's nose. To her astonishment, it did not shy away. Instead, it lowered its head, allowing her touches of acknowledging her grief. "Who are you?" Clara murmured softly, her voice barely audible over the rustling leaves. "And why do you carry my husband's saddle?" For hours, she stood there, staring at the enigmatic beast, searching for answers that refused to come. As dawn broke over the horizon, casting golden rays across the barren landscape, Clara resolved to follow the Mustang wherever it led. Perhaps it held secrets about John's disappearance, or perhaps it was merely a ghost of her past, sent to torment her with unanswered questions. Either way, she owed it to herself, to him, to uncover the truth. The journey began under the blazing sun, the air thick with dust and heat. Clara followed the Mustang as it galloped ahead, leading her deeper into unfamiliar territory. They crossed arid plains dotted with cacti, their spines glinting ominously in the sunlight. Rivers of rock twisted and turned before them, forming natural barriers that tested her resolve. Each step forward felt like a leap into the unknown, but Clara pressed on, driven by a mixture of desperation and determination. As the day wore on, the terrain shifted dramatically. The flat expanse of desert gave way to rolling hills covered in sparse vegetation, their slopes hiding countless mysteries within their folds. Birds of prey soared high above, their cries piercing the silence. Clara noticed how the Mustang moved with purpose, choosing paths that seemed instinctively clear even to her untrained eye. It was as if the animal knew exactly where it was going, and whatever destination awaited them, Clara couldn't help but feel a growing sense of unease. By late afternoon, they reached the edge of a dense forest, its towering pines standing sentinel against the encroaching dusk. Shadows lengthened, swallowing the last remnants of daylight. Clara hesitated at the threshold, her nerves fraying at the thought of entering such a foreboding place. But then, as if sensing her hesitation, the Mustang turned its head and looked directly at her. There was no malice in its gaze, only patience, and perhaps a hint of encouragement. Summoning all her courage, Clara stepped inside. The forest was eerily quiet, save for the occasional snap of twigs beneath unseen feet. Moonlight filtered through the canopy, creating patterns of light and shadow that danced along the ground. Every now and then, Clara caught glimpses of the Mustang moving stealthily ahead, its movements graceful and deliberate. She followed closely, her senses heightened, aware of the dangers lurking in the darkness. It wasn't long before they stumbled upon the ruins of an old homestead. Crumbling walls stood testament to time's relentless march, their surfaces covered in moss and lichen. Inside what remained of the main house, Clara found remnants of furniture, their once pristine surfaces now marred by decay. Among the debris lay personal items: a child's toy, a cracked mirror, a faded photograph that hinted at lives lived and lost. But it was in the barn behind the house that Clara discovered something truly extraordinary. Inside, amidst the wreckage of fallen beams and rotting hay, stood a second Mustang. This one bore markings identical to the first, its coat equally glossy and black. What set it apart, however, was the burden it carried, a bundle wrapped tightly in burlap cloth. Clara approached cautiously, her heart racing with anticipation. When she finally unwrapped the package, her hands shook violently, unable to contain the shock of what lay within. It was John's journal. Her knees buckled beneath her, and she sank to the ground, clutching the worn leather cover to her chest. Tears streamed down her face as she opened the book, revealing pages filled with John's handwriting. Entries spoke of his travels, his struggles, his hopes, and ultimately his fears. He had indeed ventured into Badlands, seeking fortune in the form of hidden gold. But little did he know, the land held secrets far greater than mere riches. According to the final entry, John had encountered a tribe of Native Americans who revered the Mustangs as sacred beings. They believed the horses possessed the spirits of fallen warriors, guiding travelers through life's trials and tribulations. In exchange for sparing their lives, John had promised to protect the Mustangs, ensuring their freedom forevermore. However, tragedy struck when bandits attacked the camp, stealing several of the sacred animals. John sacrificed himself to save the rest, disappearing into the wilderness without a trace. Clara sat there for hours, reading and rereading the entries, piecing together the puzzle of her husband's final days. She realized now why the Mustang had appeared to her, why it carried John's saddle. It was not a random act of nature, nor a figment of her imagination. It was a message, delivered by forces beyond her comprehension. When Clara emerged from the forest, the world seemed changed. The stars twinkled brighter overhead, their light casting a silvery glow across the land. The Mustang waited patiently beside her cabin, its presence a constant reminder of the journey they had shared. Though many questions remained unanswered, Clara felt a strange sense of peace settle over her soul. She understood now that some mysteries were meant to remain unsolved, that sometimes the best we can do is honor the memories of those we've lost and continue living for their sake. And so, with renewed purpose, Clara mounted the Mustang, letting it guide her toward new horizons, carry with her the lessons learned and a love that transcended even death itself. The days that followed were a blur of movement and discovery. Clara rode alongside the Mustang, her heart filled with a mix of sorrow and determination. The creature moved with an uncanny sense of direction, leading her through landscapes that shifted from the harsh desert to rolling hills blanketed in wildflowers. It was as if the Mustang knew every hidden path, every secret trail that wound through the untamed wilderness. As they traveled, Clara began to notice subtle changes in the world around her. The air grew cooler, carrying with it the scent of pine and earth. Streams appeared where none had been before, their waters crystal clear and inviting. Birds sang melodies unfamiliar to her ears, their songs weaving to the trees like threads of gold. It was as though nature itself conspired to heal her broken spirit, offering glimpses of beauty amid the pain. One evening, as the sun dipped low on the horizon, painting the sky in hues of amber and rose, the Mustang stopped suddenly. Clara reined in beside it, her gaze following its pointed stare. Before them lay a valley shrouded in mist, its contours soft and ethereal under the fading light. At the center of the valley stood a cluster of teepees, their tops disappearing into the swirling fog. Smoke drifted lazily from fires within, mingling with the natural haze to create an almost otherworldly scene. Clara's breath caught in her throat. She had heard stories of such places, hidden sanctuaries where time seemed to stand still. Yet she hesitated, unsure whether to proceed or turn back. The Mustang, however, required no prompting. With a gentle nudge of its head, it urged her forward, its eyes gleaming with assurance. Summoning her courage, Clara dismounted and led the horse toward the encampment. As she drew closer, figures emerged from the shadows, men, women, and children dressed in traditional garb, their faces painted in intricate patterns. They regarded her with curiosity but offered no hostility, their expressions calm and welcoming. A tall man stepped forward, his presence commanding yet serene. He wore a headdress adorned with feathers that shimmered in the dim light, each one seemingly alive with energy. His voice carried a resonance that resonated deep within Clara's soul when he spoke. "You have come far," he said, his tone measured and deliberate. "Few outsiders find their way here." Clara nodded, her voice trembling as she replied, I followed the Mustang. It brought me here." The man tilted his head, studying her intently. "Ah, the spirit horse. It does not bring just anyone to our sacred grounds." He gestured for her to follow, leading her to a large fire at the heart of the camp. Around the flames sat elders wrapped in blankets, their eyes reflecting wisdom accumulated over countless years. Among them was a woman whose gaze locked onto Clara's the moment she entered. Her face bore lines etched by time, yet her eyes sparkled with vitality. "This is the one," the elder said, her voice soft yet authoritative. "She carries the burden of loss, but also the strength to endure." Clara felt exposed, as if these strangers could see straight into her soul. Yet instead of recoiling, she found herself drawn to them, compelled to share her story. And so, seated cross-legged by the fire, she recounted the events that had led her to this place. The disappearance of John, the mysterious appearance of the Mustang, the journal that revealed his final days. The circle listened in silence, their faces unreadable. When Clara finished, the elder woman reached out a gnarled hand and placed it gently on her shoulder. "Your husband honored our people in his final moments," she said. "He protected what we hold most sacred. For that, we are grateful." "But why me?" Clara asked, her voice barely above a whisper. "Why did the Mustang choose me?" The elder smiled, a knowing glint in her eye. "The spirit horse chooses those who need guidance, who require healing. You were meant to come here, Clara Hayes, not only to learn of your husband's fate, but to find peace within yourself." That night, beneath a canopy of stars so brilliant they seemed to touch the earth, Clara slept soundly for the first time in years. The next morning, the elder woman presented her with a gift, a small amulet carved from bone, its surface etched with symbols that told the story of the spirit horse. "Wear this always," the woman instructed. "It will remind you of the bond between humans and the creatures that walk among us." With gratitude swelling in her heart, Clara accepted the token. As dawn broke, the Mustang appeared once more, waiting patiently outside the camp. The tribespeople bid her farewell with warm smiles and heartfelt words, their voices blending into a harmonious chorus that echoed through the valley. Riding alongside the Mustang, Clara felt a profound shift within herself. No longer was she merely the widow crying alone at night. She was a woman transformed by love, loss, and the mysteries of the Wild West. The road ahead remained uncertain, but she faced it with renewed resolve, guided by the lessons learned and the friendships forged along the way. And as the sun climbed higher, casting golden rays across the land, Clara realized something extraordinary. Sometimes, the answers we seek are not found in the past, but in the connections we make with the present and the future that awaits beyond the horizon. The days turned into weeks as Clara and the Mustang continued their journey. The bond between them deepened with each passing mile, a silent understanding growing stronger with every shared experience. The Mustang, once wild and untamed, now moved with a grace that spoke of trust and companionship. It was no longer just a guide but partner, a confidant in the vast expanse of the untamed West. One afternoon, as they traversed a particularly rugged stretch of land, the sky darkened unexpectedly. Thunder rumbled in the distance, and soon the first drops of rain began to fall. Clara urged the Mustang toward shelter, her eyes scanning the horizon for any sign of refuge. In the distance, she spotted an old barn, its wooden structure weathered by time and elements. Without hesitation, she steered the horse in that direction. As they approached, the storm intensified, lightning illuminating the sky in brilliant flashes. The barn offered little more than skeletal protection. Its roof partially collapsed and its walls splintered, yet it was enough to shield them from the worst of the downpour. Clara dismounted, leading the Mustang inside. She quickly gathered some dry hay from a corner, spreading it out for the horse to rest on. As she worked, she couldn't help but feel a pang of nostalgia. This barn reminded her of the one back at her cabin, where she and John had spent countless hours together, dreaming of better days. The storm raged outside, the wind howling through the cracks in the barn walls. Clara sat beside the Mustang, her thoughts drifting to the past. She thought of John, of the life they had built together, and of the mysterious forces that had brought her to this point. The amulet around her neck felt warm against her skin, a comforting reminder of the tribe's wisdom and the Mustang's guidance. It was then, as the rain began to subside, that Clara noticed something unusual. A faint glimmer caught her eye, emanating from beneath a pile of debris in the far corner of the barn. Curiosity piqued. She stood and made her way over, brushing aside the scattered pieces of wood and straw. Beneath them lay a small, rusted chest, its surface etched with intricate patterns that seemed to pulse faintly in the dim light. Clara hesitated, her heart pounding in her chest. What could this be? Another clue in the mystery of John's disappearance? Or perhaps something else entirely? With trembling hands, she unlatched the chest, lifting the lid to reveal its contents. Inside, nestled among layers of yellow cloth, was a collection of artifacts, old photographs, letters, and a peculiar map rolled tightly and secured with a leather strap. Clara carefully unfolded the map, her breath catching as she examined the markings. It depicted a region unfamiliar to her, filled with symbols and notations that hinted at hidden treasures or forgotten places. Her mind raced with possibilities. Could this map lead her to answers about John's fate, or was it connected to the tribe and their reverence for the spirit horse? The questions swirled in her mind, each one more tantalizing than the last. As she studied the map, the Mustang shifted beside her, its presence grounding her amidst a whirlwind of thoughts. Clara realized that whatever lay ahead, she would face it with the same courage and determination that had brought her this far. The journey had changed her, transforming her from a grieving widow into a woman capable of unraveling the mysteries of the Wild West. The next morning dawned clear and crisp, the storm having passed during the night. Clara emerged from a barn, the map securely tucked away in her saddlebag. The world seemed fresher, the air cleaner, as if the storm had washed away the remnants of doubt and fear. The Mustang waited patiently beside her, its eyes reflecting the promise of adventure. They set off once more, the landscape stretching endlessly before them. The map became their new guide, leading them through dense forests, across rushing rivers, and over mountain passes that tested their endurance. Along the way, Clara encountered other travelers, some friendly, others less so, but none who could decipher meaning behind the symbols on the map. It wasn't until they reached a secluded canyon, its walls towering high above like natural fortifications, that the true purpose of the map revealed itself. At the base of the canyon lay a hidden cave, its entrance concealed by thick vegetation. Clara dismounted, her heart racing as she pushed aside the foliage to reveal the opening. Inside, the air was cool and damp, the darkness broken only by the faint glow of phosphorescent moss lining the walls. Step by step, Clara ventured deeper into the cave, the Mustang following close behind. The sound of dripping water echoed around her, mingling with the soft crunch of gravel beneath her boots. And then, suddenly, she saw it, a chamber bathed in golden light, its source a massive vein of quartz embedded in the wall. In the center of the room stood an altar, upon which rested a single object, a necklace crafted from polished stones, its design matching the symbols on the map. Clara approached cautiously, her fingers brushing against the smooth surface of the necklace. A warmth spread through her hand, resonating with the amulet she wore around her neck. In that moment, everything clicked into place. The tribe's reverence for the spirit horse, the map's cryptic markings, the connection between the artifacts and John's final journey. This was no ordinary treasure. It was a relic of immense significance, a piece of history tied to the sacred bond between humans and the creatures of the wild. Clara understood now why the Mustang had led her here, why the universe had conspired to bring her to this exact point. It was not just about uncovering the truth of John's disappearance. It was about honoring the legacy he had left behind. With the necklace safely secured in her bag, Clara and the Mustang exited the cave, the sunlight greeting them like a long-lost friend. The journey was far from over, but Clara felt a sense of fulfillment she hadn't known in years. She was no longer alone, no longer burdened by unanswered questions. Instead, she carried with her the strength of those who had come before and the promise of adventures yet to unfold. And so, under the watchful gaze of the Mustang, Clara Hayes rode into the sunset, her spirit unbroken and her heart full of hope. For in the Wild West, where the line between reality and legend blurred, anything was possible, and sometimes the most extraordinary stories began with a single tear shed in the quiet of the night. The days that followed were marked by a quiet determination. Clara and the Mustang continued their journey, the weight of the necklace in her saddlebag serving as both a burden and a beacon. The landscape around them shifted constantly, from sun-scorched deserts to lush green valleys, each new environment bringing with it fresh challenges and revelations. Clara found herself growing more attuned to the rhythms of the wild, her senses sharpened by the untamed beauty surrounding her. One evening, as they camped beneath a canopy of stars so dense it seemed the heavens themselves had descended to cradle them, Clara reflected on the changes within herself. She no longer felt the crushing weight of her grief. Instead, it had transformed into something lighter, a gentle ache that reminded her of John without consuming her. The Mustang, too, seemed different, its movements more deliberate, its eyes holding a wisdom that transcended its years. It was during this time that Clara began to notice subtle shifts in the behavior of the Mustang. It would pause at certain points along their path, its ears twitching as if listening to something she could not hear. On occasion, it would veer off the trail, leading her to hidden springs or forgotten ruins that spoke of civilizations long past. Clara came to trust these instincts implicitly, understanding that the Mustang was guided by forces beyond her comprehension. Their travels eventually brought them to a vast prairie, its golden grasses swaying gently in the breeze. In the distance, Clara spied a herd of wild mustangs, their silhouettes stark against the horizon. Her companion broke into a gallop, its hooves kicking up clouds of dust as it raced toward the group. For a moment, Clara feared it would leave her behind, but then she saw it. The unmistakable gesture of acknowledgement as the herd accepted the black Mustang into their fold. Clara dismounted, watching in awe as the animals moved together, their movements fluid and harmonious. She realized then that the Mustang was not merely a guide or a companion. It was a bridge between worlds, connecting her to the spirit of the land itself. As the herd grazed peacefully nearby, Clara sat cross-legged on the ground, her fingers brushing the earth beneath her. She felt a profound connection to the place, as if the prairie itself whispered secrets only she could hear. Days turned into weeks, and Clara's journey took her to the edge of a great canyon, its walls carved by millennia of wind and water. The sight was breathtaking, a panorama of red rock and shadow that stretched endlessly before her. At the bottom of the canyon lay a river, its waters glinting like silver under the midday sun. Clara knew instinctively that this was where her journey would culminate, where the final pieces of the puzzle would fall into place. Descending into the canyon proved challenging, the steep paths treacherous even for an experienced rider. But the Mustang navigated the terrain with ease, its sure-footedness inspiring confidence in Clara. When they finally reached the riverbank, Clara tethered the horse and waded into the cool water, the current rushing over her boots. She retrieved the necklace from her saddlebag, holding it up to catch the light. As she stood there, the sound of hoofbeats echoed through the canyon. Startled, Clara turned to see a lone rider approaching, their figure obscured by the rising mist. Closer they came, until at last the rider dismounted, revealing a face weathered by time but kind nonetheless. "Clara Hayes," the stranger said, their voice carrying the weight of many stories. "We've been expecting you." Clara's heart raced. "Expecting me? Who are you?" The stranger smiled, extending a hand. "My name is Elias. I am a guardian of the sacred places, much like your husband once was. The tribe told me of your coming." Clara's mind reeled. How could this be? Yet, deep down, she knew it was true. Everything pointed to this moment. The map, the artifacts, the guidance of the Mustang. Elias led her to a secluded alcove near the river, where carvings adorned the stone walls. They depicted scenes of harmony between humans and animals, of battles fought and peace achieved. "These symbols tell the story of our people," Elias explained. "And now they tell yours. Your husband's sacrifice ensured the protection of the spirit horses. His legacy lives on in you." Clara stared at the carvings, her emotions overwhelming her. She understood now why the Mustang had chosen her, why the universe had conspired to bring her here. It was not just about uncovering the truth of John's disappearance. It was about becoming part of something greater, a guardian of the sacred bond between humanity and nature. As the sun dipped below the horizon, painting the canyon in hues of orange and purple, Clara prepared to say goodbye to the Mustang. The creature approached her one last time, nuzzling her hand in a gesture of farewell. Clara stroked its velvety nose, tears streaming down her face. "You've shown me so much," she whispered. "Thank you for guiding me, for helping me find my way." With a final nod, the Mustang turned and joined its herd, disappearing into the twilight. Clara watched until they were out of sight, her heart heavy yet filled with gratitude. She knew her journey was far from over, but she also knew she was no longer alone. The lessons learned, the connections forged, and a love that transcended even death would guide her through whatever lay ahead. Under the watchful gaze of the stars, Clara Hayes rode back into the Wild West, her spirit unbroken and her heart full of hope. For in a land where legends lived and mysteries abounded, she had found not just answers, but purpose, and in doing so, had become a legend herself.